All right, ready for a deep dive. Today we're taking on Apache tracking with stalking and tracking, the art of observation.
Ooh, tracking. That's cool.
Right, and before you think, wait, I live a concrete jungle, not the wilderness, I promise, this is relevant to everyone.
It's true. This book really hammers home that it's not just about surviving in the woods. It's about observation skills you can use anywhere.
Exactly. Chapters 2 and 3 especially kind of blew my mind. I always figured tracking was all about, footprints.
Footprints are just the start. It's like, think about walking into a room and instantly knowing something's wrong.
Okay, yeah, you get a feeling.
Right. But it's not one thing. It's subtle. Like a misplaced item or something's missing that should be there. Cracking's the same.
Whoa, that's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
So it's about paying attention to everything.
Yeah. Broken twigs, scuffed up leaves, even how an animal ate. It all means something.
Wild. So it's more than just like, oh, a deer came through here. You can tell what it was doing.
Totally. Tahoma, the author, he's got this awesome example about deer and antelope tracks. At first glance, you might think, same thing, right?
Right, four-legged, hoofed.
But there are these key differences. If you don't know them, could mean the difference between finding what you're tracking or getting totally lost.
Okay, now you have to tell me, what kind of differences are we talking?
So picture the hoof, right? Antelope, they've got those super narrow, pointy ones built for speed. Deer hooves are rounder, more like a heart shape. Doesn't sound like much, but it big time changes the footprint, especially in soft ground.
So if I'm picturing this right, soft ground equals a clearer track. Does that mean harder ground is basically a tracker's worst nightmare?
Not quite. It just means knowing your terrain is super important. Tahoma has this story, tracking a mountain lion. He says how important it is to constantly adjust what you're looking for based on if it's soft earth, rocky terrain, or hard-packed sand. Every surface tells a story.
It's like learning a whole language, but instead of words, it's broken twigs and like animal poop.
And just like a language, there are nuances. Like, on hard ground, those antelope tracks might be super faint, but they'll last longer. Soft ground, they'll be obvious at first, but disappear way faster.
This is already making my head spin. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got the ground covered, literally. What about weather? Doesn't rain just wash everything away?
It can be tricky, heavy rain, forget about it, gone. But a light rain, tracker's best friend, can actually make some details in dirt or sand even clearer.
Like Mother Nature's dusting for fingerprints. So cool. This is all so cool. But I gotta ask,
Thinking what I'm thinking.
you're reading my mind.
It's awesome because whether you're on a crowded city street or a hiking trail, it's the same. You got to really pay attention, look for little changes, and you'll be amazed at what you can figure out. It's like a whole new level of awareness.
It really is. You're right. I never thought of it like that. Like the world just switched to high definition.
Totally. And like anything, the more you practice, the better you get at spotting those little details. But even the pros will tell you, sometimes the trail just vanishes.
Whew. Talk about frustrating. So what do you do when you hit a dead end like that? Give up.
Not so fast. That's where chapter 4 gets really interesting. Tahoma's big thing is losing the trail doesn't mean it's over. It means it's time to use your brain, think like what you're tracking.
Okay, so if I'm picturing this right, say I'm tracking a deer and the tracks just stop in a rocky area.
Exactly.
Instead of freaking out, I should be like, okay, if I was a deer, where would I go for better footing?
Exactly. You'd start scanning for patches of softer ground nearby or maybe a game trail winding through those rocks. Animals are smart. They find the easiest path, and that usually leads them right to what they need. Food, water, shelter, you name it.
So it's not just about blindly following footprints. It's almost like you have to get inside the animal's head.
Yeah.
Use that to predict where it's going to go.
You got it. And this is where Tahoma's storytelling is just brilliant. He's got this one story, tracking a wounded elk, and it's like a masterclass in not giving up. This guy spent days on the trail, constantly adapting. As the terrain changed, the weather changed. There were times the tracks just vanished, but he never quit. Relied on his gut, his knowledge of elk behavior, and boom, it paid off.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Makes you realize this whole tracking thing, it's not just physical, right? You got to have the mental stamina, too.
Right.
And a whole lot of patience.
No doubt. And those are skills that come in handy in everyday life, don't you think? Imagine you lose something important. Instead of running around like crazy, you can use these same principles. Think back to the last place you saw it. Where would you have gone next? And use those clues.
Wow, that's actually mind-blowing. You just totally reframed that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these ancient skills, they just fit into modern life. Speaking of which, we've talked a lot about animals, but what about, tracking people? Is it just a simple swap paw prints for footprints?
Funny you should ask that because I was thinking the exact same thing when I got to chapter 2. Turns out, tracking humans, whole different ballgame.
Really? How so?
Well, we might leave clearer tracks with our shoes, but we're also way less predictable than animals. We don't just follow instinct and well-worn paths.
So instead of looking for, like, hoof prints, I'm trying to decipher the tread on someone's sneakers.
Exactly. And those treads, along with how deep the footprints are, how even or messed up they are, it all tells a story. How much the person weighed, were they carrying something heavy, even if they were running or walking. It's like Tahoma says, every step leaves a clue, and the tracker's job is to piece those clues together.
That's wild. It's like detective work, but instead of fingerprints, it's footprints.
Right. The book even gets into gait analysis.
Gait analysis. Okay, now you're just using big words to sound smart. What even is that?
Basically, it's just observing how someone walks, how long their strides are, how they place their feet, any limps, anything that stands out. It all paints a picture of that person.
So it's not just what the footprint looks like, but how it got the footprint looks like. But how it got T there.
That's so cool. I gotta be honest, when I pictured learning about tracking, I was thinking like deep wilderness. But you're saying this stuff, it translates to the city.
Oh, absolutely. That's what surprised me most about this book. The appendices, especially D and E, they're like something out of a spy movie.
No kidding. Appendix B, following human trails when they try to hide them, sounds intense.
It's got a catchy title, but the stuff inside is even better. It talks about how even when someone's trying really hard to cover their tracks, they always leave something behind.
You're saying even if they're super careful about wiping their footprints, there are still clues.
Exactly. Maybe they sweep away the footprints but forget a tiny scuff mark on the pavement, or they brush past some bushes trying to be stealthy. It's those little things, the ones you wouldn't even think about that can give them away.
Wow. Okay, so that's Appendix D. But Appendix E takes things up a notch. Stealth and stalking humans in an urban environment. It's like taking these ancient skills and dropping them right into downtown. And it works. The book talks about how things we think of as obstacles, crowds, noise, they can actually be a tracker's best friend.
Wait, really? So instead of hiding behind a tree, I'm using a crowd of people as camouflage? That's next level stuff.
Exactly. Think about it. A busy street corner, people everywhere, cars honking, music playing. It's sensory overload, right? But if you know what you're doing, that chaos, it's a shield. You blend right in.
This is blowing my mind. When we started this whole thing, I thought it'd be all about survival skills and wilderness stuff, which is cool, don't get me wrong. But now I'm realizing it's so much bigger than that. It's like a different way of seeing the entire world.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's like Thomas says in chapter 11, this isn't about like conquering nature or whatever.
Right.
It's about respect, man.
Totally. And that respect comes with understanding. The more you learn about how nature works, the more you start to see how everything's connected, how delicate the balance is.
It's true. It's like they say, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of tracking. It never really ends. Every footprint, every broken twig, it's all part of this amazing puzzle.
I love that. So we've gone from like basic footprints to disappearing in a crowd. Anything this book doesn't cover.
Well, Tahoma actually has a whole chapter on the unexpected ways tracking gets used. Chapter 10. It's got some crazy examples.
Okay, now you have to spill. What kind of stuff are we talking?
All right, so how about this? Tracking is huge GE in conservation work.
Really? Never would have guessed that.
It makes sense, though. By tracking animals, they can keep tabs on how many there are, where they're moving, even catch poachers.
Whoa, that's actually really cool. So it's not just about watching nature, it's about protecting it too.
Exactly. And then there's search and rescue. Those stories always get me.
Oh yeah, tell me more. I'm all ears.
Okay, so picture this. Hiker gets lost in the woods, right? Like seriously lost and every minute counts.
Okay, yeah, now I'm hooked.
Search and rescue teams are out there, but the terrain is a nightmare. No sign of the hiker.
Talk about pressure.
That's when you call in a really good tracker. They can read those tiny clues, figure out where the person went, and actually lead the rescue to them.
That's incredible. Like something out of a movie, but it's real life.
Yeah.
These skills are literally saving people.
No doubt. And that's why that last story Tahoma tells in chapter 10, it always sticks with me. He talks about how the earth itself is like this teacher if you just know how to listen.
That's beautiful. And honestly, after all this, I'm starting to get what he means.
It's about slowing down, really tuning into your senses, noticing the stuff most people just walk right past.
Yeah, like you unlock this whole other way of seeing things. And it was always there. We just needed to learn how to be able to see it.
Exactly. And the coolest part is you don't need any fancy gear, just your curiosity and your eyes.
So next time I'm walking around, instead of staring at my phone, I'm channeling my inner Apache scout.
I love it. Look at how people walk, the patterns in the sidewalk, even which way the wind's blowing. You never know what you might discover.
This has been amazing. I already feel like I see the world differently.
That's the thing about knowledge, right? It changes how you see everything.
It really does. Who knows, maybe these skills will even help me find those socks that disappear in the dryer.
Hey, now there's a challenge. Race you to it. Loser buys coffee.
You're on.
All right, everyone, that's it for our deep dive on Apache tracking. But, like we've been saying, the learning never really stops, right?
Get out there, explore, and keep your eyes peeled.
Happy tracking.